What's up, man? This is your boy, B. Lim, man. I'm here with my good friend of mine, man, my cousin, like family. We've been knowing each other for years. Mario Lemon's here.
Thank you for having me.
And, this is the first of many. So I guess I just want to really dive on into it. Again, welcome to Authenticity. And this young man has a great story and a tremendous journey of getting to the point of where he is now. So you want to do a brief introduction of who you are and dive right into it.
I mean, you kind of said it. Mario Lemons. When I think about who I am, I'm a lover of God and people. The work that I do in every aspect of my life, I believe, is sort of what I'm called to do. I just happen to do it as a principal of elementary, middle school. I do it as a sign language interpreter at my church. I do it as a praise and worship singer. I do it as a community member, an advocate, and a support as much as I can to make people better than what they were.
So getting to that point, right? Let's start, childhood wise, because who we start as kids, we have like this vast imagination. If we're luckily able to be born into a household that allows us to cultivate those types of things, and then who we become later on in our adulthood, sometimes it doesn't always be the same thing that we might imagine as kids. But like, how was your upbringing? Like, born and raised here in Detroit, you know what I'm saying? But like, how was the household as a kid, from what you can remember?
That's interesting. I've never shared like sort of this publicly, so I'll be kind of careful, what I want to share. But I think to answer your question around like the impact of my childhood on who I am today, I would have to say being raised with my great aunt and uncle from the age of 12 through college was a huge part of who I am today. I think growing up in that household, it was firm but loving. They were older people. They were my great aunt and uncle, so it was my mom's aunt. God rest both of their souls. They both transitioned 10 days apart from each other about 5 years ago. But those were some of the most incredible people I've ever interacted with. Even when I grew up, they were that safe space for me. So I lived with my mom, and stepdad, and my sister growing up. But there were often times where I would like go to Aunt Betty's house as like solace, and so that was the place where everybody in our family went. She was that person for everybody. And so it got to a point in my upbringing where, my family felt like it was best for me to live with them at 12. But they were church going, strong-willed, firm, structured, but truly loving people. And so life for me growing up, I felt like even though it was super structured and like there was like no nonsense, it gave me a freedom that I never thought that I could. Like they really allowed me to be who I really was and who I am. And so when it came to like singing and acting and just sort of being expressive, like they allowed that in a way that I didn't feel comfortable, growing up prior when I lived with my mom. But it was cultivated through church. Okay. So my aunt used to joke that like, I don't care, like you got your friends over all you want, they'll spend the night, whatever. And like that was everybody, cousins, everybody, friends, that's where you would be, everybody wanted to be over Aunt Betty's house. And just I don't care what y'all do, on a Saturday night, but you going to church in the morning. So my friends, if they came over on a Saturday night, they had to bring their church clothes because we was going to church. And it wasn't even just about being at church just to say that you're at church, but she used to say all the time, we are not bench warmers. These pews ain't for our booty to be warm. Like that's not why we here. And so we had to be involved. And so I talk often to people about how talented I am if people, make that reference to me. And I always give glory to God and also my church. Growing up in the church, I was able to learn how to sing. I learned how, because we had to be involved. So he was in the choir. I also learned sign language. And so I'm a sign language interpreter because when I was 12 years old, I saw the lady doing sign language and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Set up at the front and just picked it up. You know, when you're young like that, you just sort of like are a sponge. But also that became my ministry. You know, so if I wasn't singing in the choir, I was interpreting for the deaf. If I wasn't interpreting for the deaf, I'm in the plays, you know, and like different presentations we did at church. If I wasn't doing that, as I got older, as a teenager, I ended up doing vacation Bible school. And I'm telling this because it kind of shows you like some of the skills I learned over the years to be able to do the work I do as an adult. But I never forget, you know, vacation Bible school was always a fun time as a kid. And I remember once I became a teenager, it was still fun, but this lady came up to me and she says, and I don't know if she came up to me, but I was in the proximity of the conversation. And she was like, you know, we're trying to get teachers to volunteer to teach these kids, but nobody want to teach the junior boys. Those 8 to 12-year-old boys, they just give them a hard time and we ain't got nobody to teach them. You know, we have to merge the girls and the boys because don't nobody want to work with just the boys. And I was standing there and I was like, I'll give it a try, you know, and that sparked a passion for education and for teaching for me. And I remember for a number of years after that, I was the only junior boys vacation Bible school teacher. And there were kids who would bring their friends to the class every year. And I had a young man, unfortunately, who passed away. He and his friend were playing with a gun, but he didn't even go to our church, but he came every Sunday to vacation Bible school. And he loved the time that we would spend together. And so that allowed me to understand the impact that I had as a black man in the education space, but also knowing that like I had a gift for it. It was a knack. Like it wasn't hard work for me. It wasn't something I had, you know, I felt like I had to drag myself to do, which is what that lady was implying that like nobody wanted to do it. I'm like, I was a junior boy at some point, you know what I'm saying? And like there were people who believed in me and sort of poured into me. So why not? And so it became a huge passion for me. Then I became the vacation Bible school coordinator. I think at least 2 years. I think I did it 3 years. But me and my friends, once we became young adults, we were like, hey, let's do what the older adults did for us and cultivate these experiences for kids. And so we had a blast, being creative and coordinating. And so then I learned like I'm pretty good with like organizing and like the administrative part. And so, as I think about who I am today, having been in a career of education for over a decade now, starting as an elementary school teacher to a behavior interventionist, and now going into my 6th year as a principal. I can't say that, I just came up with these ideas or that life just kind of happened. It really was in my truest belief that like God was planting those seeds and like setting me up with these skills and passions to be able to do the work I do right now.
One of the things that ended up learning having your mind place of solace and the importance of how those who work together to help you focus as you move forward into really centering yourself around, okay, where am I right now? Where do I truly want to go? When you said your place of solace was at your aunt and your uncle's, do you believe, thinking about it now, that because you were able to find that there, it kind of gave you the ability to be free in your belief that those things, those cultivations that were inside of you, or the arts, were that was that environment the place that allowed you to really just sit down and be like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Absolutely. And as you're sharing that, like I feel a little more comfortable. Initially, I didn't, but I grew up with my mom, and she's not on social media, so maybe she might not hear this. But it was truly an abusive sort of environment. My mom, hard worker, like we have a strong relationship now, but growing up, I couldn't understand why she wasn't like the lovey-dovey, like kind, quiet, sort of soft-spoken mom that everybody else had. Like my mom was like she's considered the crazy auntie of the family. So like that's my mama. But I learned later that she, struggled with mental health concerns and like the stress of working and trying to provide and all that. Like I get it now more as an adult, but as a very sensitive young, boy, I didn't understand that, and I struggled a whole lot, and didn't find myself feeling heard or validated or safe in a lot of ways. And so my family saw that, and as I talked to family over the years, they kind of all conspired to like have me be with Aunt Betty and Uncle Jay, which like makes a whole lot more sense than it did in that moment. Because even when I went with Aunt Betty and Uncle Jay, I felt like, like, am I going back home? Like, you're not gonna come and get me, kind of thing. But anyway, it all worked out. But so I was a very timid, quiet, like scared, and insecure in a lot of ways because of the messages that I was getting from, growing up in the household that I did. But when I got to Aunt Betty and Uncle Jay's house, man, it was like, and even before I moved there officially, anytime you would go, it's like, hey, baby, give me a hug, jump up in the bed with me. I mean, we're just like family, we're love. We're like, hey, we no nonsense. We ain't about to be playing too much foolishness, but like, yo, you can be a child here. Like, you can express yourself. You can, if we watching movies as a family and we're watching, the Temptations. We could get up and you could dance and sing along with it. Like, I'm not about to check you and tell, sit down, boy, not making all that noise. Like watch your wrist. Like, like just all these sort of like policing childhood behaviors that I experienced growing up. I didn't really have that, like there were boundaries for sure. Saturday morning we was up watching baseboards with Murphy also. Mm-hmm. So like old school, but there was just this beautiful balance of being able to allow me to be who I was and who I needed to be all that time. And that sparked my interest to join Mosaic Youth Theater of Detroit. It allowed me then to explore even more at church and different ministries and doing things like that. But I felt so safe growing up at Aunt Betty and Uncle Jay's house. And I felt like it definitely did set me up for being open to what's possible moving forward.
So here's a good one, man. It's so much that I can relate to because it's so much that we can see now from our various perspectives of life as adults. Yeah. Whereas a lot of the kids I feel, are cheated of certain structures that we had. Like when you mentioned washing the baseboards with the Murphy oil. So
taking the bus to school. Like my auntie was like, why would I get out my warm bed to take you to school and the bus is running? I'm like, I guess you're right.
I do understand that, some of it, our economy is what it is. It's a lot more demanding parents, but even as a parent myself, right, in a very healthy co-parenting relationship, one of the things that stuck out again that you said was that we make sure that our kids, especially our boys, because our daughter is older now, that they're 10 and 11. And crazy enough, I can't really register it. Like, that's what we want our boys to be. We want them to be 10 and 11.
Yeah, to be a child.
Why they're in that age group, because they're only going to be that age once.
Yep.
And there's no need for them to be older than that when we are supposed to be the adults.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Not ragging on parenting skills of other people, but it's like they'll never be the man of the house.
Because you're the man of the house.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Even with their mom, they're still, you know what I'm saying, they're not resuming or taking on a role that's beyond what their age and mental capacity is to understand, so that when they do come of age, it's not misconstrued. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like called the Michael Jackson tragedy.
Yeah, where you're trying to relive a childhood.
Where you revert back, and then those who are the age that experience those things look down on you. Like, I'll never forget the interview he did. He was climbing a tree, and the guy was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm climbing a tree. You never climbed trees? But he's like, yeah, as a boy. It was like, there's two different lives here. Whereas when you were a boy, you could do that. When he was
working.
being drilled, he was working. So now that he's at liberty to do it, it's like, not necessarily reverting back, but in a sense, trying to, grab hold of that which you might have been cheated out of. So as an educator, right, you having like hands-on experience with the kids and stuff, how important is it really for them to be presented with the balance? And two-part question, when they're presented with that balance, do you think it allows them to really be focused when they enter into the classroom versus being distracted, getting into trouble because they're dealing with almost like a dual identity of who I'm trying to become and what I'm trying to be made to be, and just not having that real place of solace?
Yeah. You know what? I'll have to caveat it with saying that like my school culture is probably a little different than most, just because we started so small. So I got there when it was only kindergarten through fifth grade. There was one hallway, one class per grade, and over the years we added a grade every year, and then we started doubling up with sections. So when I talk about like the school being a family and me knowing your oldest sibling all the way to the one that's about to come to kindergarten this year, but the other one is in 11th grade now. Like I have that level of relationship with families in that way. And so we don't get a whole lot of new families outside of like that kindergarten group, or really, actually, yeah. So we don't really get a whole lot of new kids. So the kids I've been working with all these years, they know this, they know that our school is a safe space. They know, how we get down. They know that there's so many adults who love them and want to see them succeed. And there's adults who've been there just as long as I've been there too. So like, I think the dynamic is a little different when they come into our space, even if they have, other sort of experiences outside of school. Once they come into our school, I'm at the front door. Good morning, good to see you. All right, hit a nice haircut, brother. Good to all right, come on. Wait, didn't you have a football game the other day? You gotta tell me. Tell your mama to send me an email, because I keep hearing that you're doing the thing over on that field, but I haven't been able to come. So tell me, send me the information, whatever. And so they leave me. They walk by me, the secretary at the door. Hey, baby, good to see you. How you doing? Come on down. Drop their lunch off at the lunch room. They eat breakfast. They got 3 other adults. Like, good to see you. Hey, tuck your shirt in. Good. All right, give me a hug. And before I even get to the front door of their classroom, there's like 5 or 6 adults who've already acknowledged them as humans, as kids first. Right. And so I think that that's one of the most powerful things at my school, because sometimes we try in schools, the culture, try to police kids and try to get them to, be compliant right away. Like, they come in the door. Yeah, but you go wear a uniform today? Oh, wait, why you got that on? Tuck your shirt in. You gonna be good today? We'll have a rough one today. Like, can I come in and say hello? Can you acknowledge me as a person first? There was this like interview with Toni Morrison, and she was talking about the bluest eye with Oprah, and there's a reference in the book that they were talking about how to be able to see the humanity in the person first, like to be able to say that you're beautiful, you're a great person, and here's a way that we can improve. You know what I mean? Like it just was like, for me, that's just how I am. Whereas like before you're a student, you're a child first. And same thing for my staff. It's like I do the same thing with them. You're a human. We all got all kinds of stuff going on. A lot of the stuff that I got going on. Is no way that I can show up in this space and like just leave it at the door right away, And so like I need you to acknowledge like, hey, you good? You good? All right, good to see you. Good morning. And let me get into a space to be ready to do work after people have acknowledged that I'm a human. I'm Mario before I'm Mr. Williams. And so I model that for the kids. I modeled it for the staff. And so I think our culture in general just breeds and cultivates an environment of belonging where people feel like they can be safe.
So when you came into the school,
it was not like that.
So you created that structure.
I think that there was a structure in place before we got there. It was not implemented in the way that me and my staff have implemented over the last almost 8 years. So when we got there, me and several of my friends that came over to the school, they only had one returning teacher at the time. So almost like a full school takeover, your turnover, if you will. And I was the behavior interventionist at the time. So part of my work was to support students who needed some more social emotional learning and development, classroom management, support for teachers, culture and climate work is kind of what I ended up, sort of being the person for. But those first 6 weeks of that school, I mean, those kids really struggle to get along with each other, to listen, to be kind, use words that were appropriate, in interacting with each other, manage their emotions. I remember many times there were students in my offices having temper tantrum, like second, third, fourth, fifth grade. It's just like, you should be able to handle this a lot. You're not like a 3 or 4 year old. Like, what's happening here? And so we worked really hard. And again, I like to say the first 6 weeks is when we started like realizing, like, okay, now we got, now we've been consistent. Now they know we here and ain't go lead them like the other teachers did. Now they know that this is what we do every single day. Now they know that we go call your mama and have her come sit with you if you know what I mean? Like these like structures but also these opportunities for them to see that we love them and we really care about them outside of this, reading, math, and writing. And so we saw a shift around like the first 6 weeks. Like after that 6 week, they were like, oh, okay, cool. I guess I could like sit back. Cause you sort of like see, and this is human nature too, where it's like you're a new person, you come in here, you got this tension and you're like, maybe there is some like area of growth that both of you can kind of like, oh wow, I came in a little too hard or hey, like I was doing too much. But like, they actually cool, like, oh, they call my mom and they don't like me. Like, no. The next day they was like, good morning, good to see you. Yeah, but I just got in trouble yesterday. Like, I still can like have a seat next to you, or I can have a sticker now. You know what I mean? And so I think that we work very hard and very intentionally to create the culture that we have at the school.
Do you think that as you led that culture change, that subconsciously it's a direct reflection on what happened to you?
Absolutely. I say this all the time too with my staff. Two things. One, I say if we do this right, these kids are gonna grow up to be the adults that we're gonna be in community with, and we're gonna feel safe. We're gonna be excited. We're gonna be proud. So like, let's do this right. I also say that I'm honored to do the work because I am the adult for these kids that adults work for me. Like my school, is literally down the street on the same street that I live on, just right around the bend. I graduated from high school a block away from that. So like when I talk about those kids being me, I was those kids, right? And the adults that poured into me at school, at church, at Mosaic, at all these opportunities that I was a part of, like they made me who I am, and so I'm very intentional about the work that I do because I know the potential. Because if I'm doing the things that the people did for me, for them, statistically, they're going to end up like me, you know what I'm saying? Or they're going to have a fighting chance to be the best themselves, the best versions of themselves as possible, because I'm giving them all I got. Because that's what they deserve. That's what our community deserves. Because at some point, I'm gonna be old, and I want to be able to look while I'm driving and be like, oh, okay, cool. Now, like, oh Lord, let me get off the road, and I see some of the kids admire over there. I see them at the gas station, like some of our alum, the ones that are in high school, and I'm just so proud. Like the first time I saw one of my kids outside of the school, setting that like went to Renaissance, they were at the gas station. I was like behind them in a line. And we talk, in education and like, why do we need math? It's so that you don't get cheated out your money, whatever. Mm-hmm. So he's up there getting his change, whatever. And so I'm mentally like, sort of like making note of that. Like, okay, so you know how to do the math exchange or, like know how to exchange his money. But he was so kind. This guy that was at the counter had a thick accent. And this boy who, was at our school, who now is in high school, was just like, he could have been like, huh, what? I can't hear, like there's so many interactions could have been different, but he was just so kind and compassionate, and polite. And I was like, that's a good kid. Like, and then again, like he was at our school maybe 3 or 4 years, he wasn't there since kindergarten, but I was believing that like, we must have had some type of impact to see him be able to be financially literate and like function and also just be a good person.
we talk about things that led you to be that for so many kids that under your watch your educational career.
Mhm.
Let's go back to the structure of it all. Because I think a lot of times, personally, teaching my boys all about structure, right? Having these things set up so that they can guide you into being successful and receiving the rewards that you like to enjoy. But you got to have the order first. What are some of the things that created your structure beyond, you know, with your aunt and uncle, but like, you started talking about church,
Yeah.
you know, and the various ministries. Like, how did that structure play a part in the development of who you are, what you do, in such a way that you do?
Mhm. That's a really deep question. And I mean, I could go a bunch of different lanes and talk about different structures. Um, but one of the things that's top of mind for me is like, I grew up at El Bethel Church with Pastor Lawrence C. Glass Jr. And one of the things that he did that was super special that I appreciate now as an adult, he invested in young people. Like, his youth ministry while I was there, like it was about the young people because he also believed that like, yo, if you invest in the kids, they could grow up and be the adults. I mean, he knew it, back then, you know what I mean? And all the people that I grew up in church with, like, were doing great work in our respective spaces. So he was very intentional about that. And so having those, Bible classes specifically geared to young people, having choirs and mime ministries and step and dance and whatever the kids wanted to do. If you wanted to be involved in church, there was a space for you at my church. But it wasn't just fun. It was like you were also learning and being held accountable. You couldn't be in the choir if you didn't go to Bible class. It wasn't just come on Sunday or come to rehearsal. No, you got to learn. And then you sign in. If your name wasn't on the thing, you ain't coming. You're not singing in the choir. And that was the fun one. Like, being in the choir was the fun part, or being on the dance ministry or mine. Like, so we had to go to Bible class. He was very, very big on like tithing and being able to give to the church. Like, whatever little money you got, like, you need to be contributing, like, because that is the practice. That's a discipline that you have to have. The other thing is we participate in like whole church-wide initiatives. And I remember I was 12 or 13 years old when we all read The Purpose-Driven Life. And it was I would assume, that was the only church I grew up in, like that one. And then now, I go to Central Baptist Church, but like I didn't realize like how different this was, that like he would invest the young people or expect young people to also like be a part of these whole, church-wide initiatives. Right. And so, I read The Purpose-Driven Life at like 12 or 13 years old, and it changed my life. And I'm like, yo, like God really wants me to like be in my purpose, want me to like share my gifts, want me like, and it really shaped the way I saw everything and the way that I operated in my life. And so, fasting was another thing. That was another structure that he instilled in all of us. So we had a prayer partners ministry, and literally every day of the every day of the month, you had a day that you and your prayer partners would fast and pray on that day. And I remember my first couple years of being on the prayer partner ministry, I was on the 22nd. And so here it is, every 22nd of the month, no matter what the month is, I was fasting and praying with a group of people, young, old, and indifferent. Like it was, and we would pray, we would send prayer requests. We had 24 hours of prayer so that the church would be open a couple times a year, where it was like, hey, everybody sign up for a slot. If you're a prayer partner, you got to do at least 2 hours, come in to pray. I mean, and so like that was who I was. Like that was, and it didn't feel like some horror stories I hear people, being at church on Sunday until 10 o'clock at night, and Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday and Saturday. Like, yes, I felt like, I was at church a lot, but like it was meaningful, right? It was a community, and what's funny is that like that also then allowed me to understand the power of community and relationships, because once I started Mosaic, I was acting as a theater company. I ended up being in plays a whole lot. And the church would literally pack out whole nights where it'd be like, I get on the stage, like you could hear like a whole section of the theater is people from El Bethel. And then when I graduated from high school, they all came and was supportive. When I started my own theater company, remember I was doing Sharing the Gift project. I literally just wrote emails and letters to people like, hey, I'm thinking about producing a play. God put this on my heart. It's called Sharing the Gift Project. You know, we learned growing up about sharing the gifts that we have. And so I want to produce this play. Hey, you want to be a sponsor? If you pay $100, you get a free ticket and, you know, your name in the program. That funded my whole company for 3-4 years of me producing plays and concerts just off of the strength of the relationships that I built at my church. And so those structures then, to answer your question, allowed me to use those sort of like disciplines and mindsets and relationship building, and just like strong faith-based, you know, sort of like principles to guide the rest of my life too. So I pray, I fast, I commit to everything. And it's one last story I'll share too. It's just like being a man of your word too. You know, when it was time to serve, if you was supposed to be, you know, ushering that Sunday, or you supposed to be doing whatever that, like that's, you commit to it because that's what you're supposed to do. And so at my church that I'm at right now, I'm a sign language interpreter, but I also sing on the praise team. And sometimes I try my best not to do both on one Sunday because we got four, 3 locations and 4 services now. And so sometimes, so I only supposed to like interpret once a month, but then most other Sundays I'll sing on the praise team. And so this last time I had to interpret, I did my math wrong, or dates were wrong, and I ended up committing to sing and interpret for the sermon that same. So I'm doing 4 singing services and 1 full sermon, which like the sermon is like a lot to do, you know, with signing. And I did it. I was exhausted. It's fine. And the leader of the sign language ministry, she pulled me aside at Bible class yesterday. I was like, I was just bragging about you, Maury. I was like, what? She was like, I was just talking about how committed you are to everything that you do. She said, I remember just these last couple Sundays, you sang 4 services, came down from the pulpit, came and interpreted for this sermon. And I knew you were tired, and, you know, you thought you didn't do a good job, and I was encouraging, blah, blah, blah. She said the deaf lady that was there, she was a guest. She literally thought you were a hard of hearing person, like who were a part of the deaf community, because she thought you did such a great job. And she was like, oh, that's the Holy Spirit. That boy was exhausted, you know, but he's a man of his word. And so it just encouraged me yesterday to know that, like, you know, I'm not here to like just do whatever I want to do. Like, I understand that there's like, you know, a purpose for my life, but also when you commit to doing stuff, like, even if you make a mistake or you miss, like, just do it. Cause that's how I was raised. I don't know nothing other than just like doing what I'm said that I'm gonna do. So anyway.
When you, like, I remember I came up with, and I give credit to I started going there on. But the reason why I went was because the first time I went, I was really feeling it. Then I got another youth pastor there again, with a real close friend of mine, and it was the best time I could ever have.
Yeah.
Right, and I understand the importance of really pouring into the youth ministry. I think that was a shining light for that church. Great direction that the still pouring into the youth would be the future of the church, and a lot of churches really don't get that concept, really don't really pour into it. It's usually more so focused on the adults or the older ones. Okay,
they go on to glory, and then you ain't gonna have no church.
Yeah. My churches got wiped out during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But for that not to be the center focus, but to really understand from your perspective how how important and valuable is it to really, from your perspective, as a child, to now being the principal and chief investor now with kids, how important is it to really make that investment into kids?
I think it's paramount. Like it's one of the best long term investments that any organization, any institution, any community could ever do. That like my pastor talk about this oftentimes. That like church is not a social club, you know. So and he talks about it more so about like us giving back to the homeless or people who are in need and like people who are a little more disenfranchised. But he also talked about it with young people. So like this ain't just for the adults to just be like, yeah, I went to church. Hey, girl, how you doing? Or you know what I'm saying? That's my boy over there. Like no, like we can have community, and what are we doing to reach back and to bring people up? And so I believe that in every section of a community, like being able to pour back into the young people, teaching them, mentoring, motivating, empowering them. That's the lifeline of any community. Because without it, like I said, you're not going to be safe. You're not going to be sustained. Things will be values and principles will be dissolved, and it'll just be nothing. Nothing worth noting. So yeah, obviously I'm biased because I work with kids all day and I see, I get a chance to see the investment, a little more in real time than most people, but yeah, I think it's super important.
If you could, how would you? What would be the message to the younger version, like the Mario now, right? Mario now that that understands it, not all, but gets it. Your your lesson of love, the Mario that didn't make it to Betty, like that Mario. What would be what's the message? What's the message of love of yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, that's real deep. Um,
I mean, and I say that
yeah,
because
no, I get it.
like I often wonder that myself, right? Mm-hmm. Because like I come from a structure. Like I learned structure from my mother, my grandmother, two artists. I learned my work ethic from my moms and my grandmother. Two hard, hands down, two artists. Working women, no nonsense. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Had these funnest moments with as a kid, but they were structured.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Grandmother was like, want it, you work for it. You know what I'm saying? Touch it unless you're gonna buy it.
No, that's good.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Even with my mom, you know what I'm saying, is there was a lot of like, this is what you have to do. You're learning how to iron it, like to fend for yourself. Yeah. Where you at? Know where you at. Like it's a lot of different structure points. Yeah. Because it's a preparation for if I ain't here, adult, yeah. Or in case of emergency. You know what I'm saying? So when I look back on who I am now, when I now see my son, you know what I'm saying, like little bright, very emotional. When they call his name, they're calling my name, but I didn't name him Junior. I named him second, right? So that he will have the name, but not the weight. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's good. So it would be like charting his own path for who we are and where the name will go, where the legacy will go with that name. But it's the greatest lesson I learned though is that I'm parenting me because of the resemblance.
Yeah.
So much so as far as his demeanor,
You see
mindset,
yourself in him.
it's like literally staring into the mirror.
Wow. Okay.
And so I
Gotcha.
had, say it's like when you're looking into the mirror, what is that message of love to yourself, that the void that still resides inside the mirror?
I would say you're worth it. Stick it out. You are an incredible force. You have an amazing future ahead of you. It might look dark and scary and bleak, but it gets better later. Absolutely. Please trust me. It gets better later.
Road to self-discovery is one that we cannot imagine or fathom while we're in it. But I've been saying lately, the journey forward is paving. Those two will always go hand in hand. But in order to go forward, you got to grow. Who you are now. Real quick segment. Spoke about the relationship with your mom. Is I saw the other day Facebook page.
That's my twin. He was the same. Spit image.
Yeah. The relationship?
Yeah. As an adult, I get it now. We just celebrated one of my brother's 31st birthday. We all just went out and hung out with him. And he has a son that's 4 now. And we were just talking like, my dad. Oh, so this is what happened. My dad was like, we were at a rooftop bar, like everybody dressed up. It was real nice, whatever. And my dad was like, "You 31? And you having a party like this?" When I was 31, I had you and I had Mario, and we was trying to scrape money to get diapers and whatever. And so he was like joking, but very proud of my brother being able to amass a level of success, that he has, and essentially he's like in a better position at the same age as my dad. And I think now that I'm on this side of adulthood, I understand that both my parents truly, and all my family, like even my aunt and uncle, they weren't perfect, but I do, acknowledge them for like being really change makers in my life. But like my parents did the best they could. They really did what they thought was best for me in every aspect of my life, right? And I think about me, and being my age, could I handle, like the stuff that they had to deal with the job market, with, the weight of having to manage kids and 2 households and, like all these sort of dynamics that like I don't have to deal with, like because I took a different path. And so I think I have a whole different level of respect and appreciation for who they are. It's just like hardworking, well-intended people. And so, so my dad called me earlier today, like, "What you doing, son?" I'm like, I'm retwisting my hair. I was like, because I had this podcast with you or whatever. He was like, all right. That event we went to last week, what's that called? So we just like chit chatting. And I'm like, about it, I was like, "Do you need something else?" He's like, "No, I was just wondering." All right, cool. So like, yeah, it's like, I ain't even want nothing. But it's like, that type of, and he's like, "You be safe out there, all right?" I was like, "I'm not going nowhere to doing a podcast in my house," but but he's still like we have that friendly banter in that way. And I think that like I've learned that nobody's perfect. I could go down a list of things that I wish both my parents had done differently growing up. But because I'm a person of faith, I have to believe that like all things work together for the good of them who love God and are called according to his purpose. and to watch my life go down this road, that road, down here, and then see where I am right now, I could be a totally different person if I was still living with my mom through, my childhood. I never lived with my dad like formally, even though like we had a good relationship. I would go over there every, other weekend or so. And then I have three brothers, over there and a stepmom. Um, but like, even if I lived with them, which he also acknowledged not too long ago, several years ago, I had a little resentment with him because my dad is such a great guy, truly the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. Like even to this day, I feel like I'm mean in comparison to my dad with most situations. I'm like, no, dad, you know what I'm saying? But like, he just that guy. But because I look exactly like him, I'll be down the street, I'll be at a mall, I'll be at a store anywhere, and people like, yeah, you. I'm like, yep, Matt's son. Because like they're either looking at me like either this dude ain't age or that's got to be his son. But every single time they're like, yo, I was in a band with your dad. I went to high school with your dad. He's such a great guy. You know what I mean? Like it's nothing but love and just kind words of encouragement. And so I'm honored to be a part of his legacy. And then the flip side is also that like people see him like, are you Mario's dad? Oh, I love Mario. You know what I mean? So like I've created a sort of an image and reputation for myself because my dad set that expectation because I saw how people interact with him. So even in those moments where I feel like I wish my dad was a little more firm or like had advocated for me in some type of way, like I learned over the years, like my dad and I had a conversation about some of those moments where I'm like, yo, you're just too nice. Like you just like you letting people run over you and you ain't even come and get me, from my baby Uncle Jay's house. Like, why wouldn't you? You knew my mom was bipolar, so like and that wasn't safe. And he literally told me like that he also knew that baby Uncle Jay was the best place in me. And when I tell you I broke down, this is maybe a few years ago, I can't remember, but I picked him up for the airport. Like, so he was in the car and we were just kind of having, some talking. He finally told me because he knew, like I love him. I think he's the nicest guy ever. And part of me wished that he was sort of like more like my mama. It's like no nonsense, just like you or whatever. And that's that little piece of me being little Mario, wishing that my parents had came and got me and been the parents that I wanted them to be, but they couldn't be because that's not who they were. And so that gave me so much peace, Brian, to be able to like look my dad in the face and hear him tell me like, son, I did that on purpose because I knew that you would be who you are today if you had a different household.
How did it feel being able to get that out?
I mean, I didn't even know, like, you know what I mean? Like, and he gave some more context I won't share because I really don't want to like have people, be all in our, but what he said essentially, like I said, was that like I advocate in the way that I advocate. Like my mom was like, I call my mom right now. I called her about something recently. She's like, you need me to come up there? But like, she ready to fight. She ready to cuss people out. And like, sometimes that's appropriate. You know what I'm saying? Right. My dad's not like that at all. Not even a little bit. But to hear that he advocated and had my back in a way that like set me up for success in life, in a way that was the way that he would do it, it gave me so much peace. Because, like I said, I love my dad, and like I don't have no ill feelings or resent. Like he'd come over my house right now, and like we'd be kicking and talking. Like that's I don't have no type of energy negative about him in that way. But if I'm honest, he knew that I still had that little inkling in the back of my head. Like, what if? Dang, Dad, like you don't be doing like.
I think a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
Thought about that with my father, right? We'll call my dad, who, he knew my mom was pregnant with me, still chose me. You know what I'm saying? Even when they broke up, he still chose me. Still picked me up. It flipped, and I was going to pick him up, live and bring him back here. So introduce him. That gave me such a solidification because he chose me. He didn't have to. That's true. You know what I'm saying? Act like, think like, oh man, whole thing is how it's bloodline, not part of his family,
but your family,
you know, yeah, we family. But then when I got a chance to meet my father, it was like, okay, you know, things happening within me. This is something that we can touch on. Two more questions for you. There's some things that's happening inside of me that's not lining up on my mother's side of the family. And I feel that it's okay for me to have a question about somebody, but it's not okay for me to have a question about me. Start coming about health wise and different things of that nature. Like these are things. This is the reason why you need to know who your parents
history,
are,
so that you know the
especially
history.
your history. Because if you have kids, like I do, when something go wrong, the first thing they ask you about is family medical history. And if you don't know those things, you're at a disadvantage. Even though half the time we're guessing, because there are some things that have happened in our previous generation that may have skipped, and then it just appear out of nowhere. But when I met my father for the first time, I could tell he was nervous, right? But it wasn't until he called me, and I realized when he called me on his phone, he was open for a relationship, and I knew that this was my opportunity to allow myself to be vulnerable in expressing how I felt. And it was important for him to know that I didn't have any ill. You know what I'm saying? Because my mother never painted a bad picture.
He just wasn't there.
He wasn't there. Circumstances happened where he could fulfill his duties, and this is what happened. And I understood that because, you know, God placed in my life two great men. You know what I'm saying? He placed in my life my dad who passed away with, you know, he came. And my other dad who was there, I called my godfather, who's still in my life, you know what I'm saying, from age 3. You know what I'm saying? So I've had these two great individuals in my life that my mom, you know, placed, you know what I'm saying, in my life. And that who chose me. But while I asked how did it feel to be able to have that conversation, when my dad calls like, hey, you know, I just want to move back to my father calls and say, hey, I moved back to Detroit, you know, I'm here. You know what I'm saying? So the first thing I said was, all right, cool, man, I'm gonna take you out to dinner. You know, being that he's a chef, I took him to Motor City back when the food was good. Sorry, Motor City. You know, it was an exciting moment for me because I knew I finally had to let him know how I felt. And I think a lot of times, especially when we're kids, there's a lot of feelings and mixed emotions that we may not understand. And as adults, sometimes we get robbed, and I'll be able to allow that child to speak so he can heal or get his point across. Where you can have that conversation that'll bring some type of clarity so that there is always a vulnerable moment when you meet that allow you to be like, yeah, maybe we can just have it. There's no guard. And when I did that, you know what I'm saying, I think it opened up the door, whereas it allowed us to have the great relationship, even though it's not constant. You know what I'm saying? But when my kids would go over there, it's just nothing but an environment of love, cultivating the community, or cultivating that atmosphere where there's always growth in knowing where we are and who we are. And it kind of helps, you know what I'm saying, with the whole authenticity part of knowing, you know, okay, this is who my son is, this is who he became. Because he saw me as a minister, he came and heard me preach. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like full circle, like where he could be proud to be like, okay,
that's mine.
And then to hear that, you know what I'm saying? Because every boy, especially the son, that's the seal of approval when your father says, "Man, I'm proud of you." Like when they're like, "Wow," you know what I'm saying? Like that is the most fulfilling moment I think that I'd make sure both of my boys know. They wake up in the morning, they with me. The first I'm like, "Hey, give me a hug." They get a kiss. You know what I'm saying? They hear, "I'm proud of you." Even getting them hooked up into this jiu-jitsu school I got them into. I'm like, yo, stop playing. Like, get serious. Be stronger than that. Pay attention. And then I'm proud of you. High five. But not only that, it extends to the other kids as well, because it's important for that firm and strong voice to be heard in the life, to cultivate them and their growing, and is also that remember in those types of situations. How did you handle the passing of your
That was hard. As you see, like their obituary is still there. Like a lot of my artwork in my house is from her. Um, so we knew she was transitioning, and so she was in hospice, and so I was there, almost every day, after work, um, until the end. But she was such a strong soldier. She had had cancer before and beat it, and this was like she knew that this was to help her. It was going to make her transition. But she had prepared me like I was like we were like that, So we had our conversations before. Her best friend had passed away from cancer, and she was right there with her, and there were conversations she had with her that she would share with me about just being at peace about it. And so there were moments that we had, together. I remember we were laying in the bed and there was something on TV, like a court show, and the daughter had got killed or whatever, and the mom came and read a scripture. It's like, I fought the good fight, like whatever. And so she says that scripture, and then Betty like teared up and she said, hard as I could, Mario, and I'm proud of you. You did your thing. So we hugged and whatever. So that was one of the last like endearing moments that I had. And so I think for me, I was at peace just because I knew that I had no guilt. We had a strong relationship. I knew she was proud of me. She was my biggest supporter in most situations, and I knew what she knew was what could happen after she transitioned. So like, I felt fine. I did not know that my uncle was also sick at the time, and so he was in hospital, and he ended up not even making it to the funeral because he also was transitioning. And so that kind of took me by surprise. And then 5 days later, my dad's dad passed away. So it was three back to back transitions. Um, and then I became the principal of the school. So the whole month of June of 2019, I was either planning a funeral, at a funeral, about to plan another funeral. Like that was just like what I was saying. And I'll share too that like I had signed my contract to be the principal 2 weeks before she transitioned. And I remember I came to the room, she was in hospice. And I talked to her about it before I did it. And she was like, pray about it, if you want to do it, do it. So I told her I did it. Left, came back next day or whatever. And she had some friends who were in the room visiting. And then the lady says, okay, Mr. Principal. And I'm like, wait, how do you know? And she was sitting there like, looking like, well, you already know. I told everybody my nephew, the principal, and I obviously had just signed the contract. And then, of course, she transitioned, my uncle and granddad. And then July 1st is when I officially became the principal. And I just worked. To be honest, there's a whole nother conversation about grief and handling, emotions for sure. But, in short, I went the whole month of July and August, hiring staff, preparing for professional development, just being on autopilot. Started the school year in September, just running, And it wasn't until a random Saturday in the middle of October, and I broke down. I cried and cried all night long. And I couldn't sort of get my emotions together, right? And it wasn't like a cry of guilt where I was like, I wish that I would, because I truly don't have that. I got so many pictures, so many memories, who I am today, how I show up for people. I talk about her like she's still here all the time, you know what I mean? How I sort of interact with people in general. It's I am a Betty in manner, sort of in Mario form. And most people know that too, I ain't Betty's boy. But it was I hadn't cried. I hadn't really sat with the fact that like I won't see her in the physical anymore, and that was what I miss, and that's what grief is. And they say that grief is like a wave, like it'll come and go. Like you be like I said, I was months just like autopilot. You know, one of my friends even mentioned like when you closed the casket, you was like everybody broke down because she was that for everybody, and I was just like, all right, don't continue with the services, you know what I mean? And so, but that's just how I am, and that's how I show up for the community and for my family. But that time when I broke down, I realized I needed therapy. I needed to have some time to kind of like close and have some closure. So I went to a grief group. And most people also was like, you're nuts that you literally lost 3 people like in your family back to back, and now you just like doing the work. You know what I'm saying? Like, God bless you, but also, are you okay? So anyway, so I went to I forgot the name of the church. It was a church out in the suburbs, North Ridge. Yes, North Ridge. They had a grief group that someone recommended me to go to, and I went there, and I thought it was really nice, like to be able to like have other people who have also lost loved ones. There was tons of great activities we did where we bring pictures and we like speak about our family in a way that is super supportive, and then people would check on you in the interim, and it was a nice community. But there was a point where I realized that, like I need to like do some soul searching, like really like process like a lot more than just like transition, you know. And that's when I got my therapist. And there were some like health concerns, like my blood pressure was like weird, you know, at times I ended up being on blood pressure medicine for 3 years and now I'm off of it and haven't had any issues, blood pressure regulated. Praise God, super grateful for that because most people don't get off high blood pressure medicine. But therapy helped me a whole lot where it was just me and this other lady. And I could talk about Aunt Betty, I could talk about Uncle Jay, I could talk about my grandpa Neen, I could talk about work, I could talk about relationships, you know what I mean? And that was the first time I had a time to like take care of myself. And the first time I was in the meeting with the lady, she says, Mario, if you don't take care of yourself, your life and your legacy will be short lived. And I was like, nice to meet you too. So, but it really did change sort of the dynamic of how I sort of show up, because I was all about like continuing the legacy of Aunt Betty and Uncle Jay and like trying to be there for the community. But now, you know, my body's breaking down. I'm not taking time to rest. I'm not taking time to, you know, eat right. I'm not, you know, I'm just going. Cause like, this is how I'm dealing with my grief. It's like, no, you know, I don't want to sit there and cry and be, you know, in all of my emotions. It's like, Aunt Betty want me to get out here and do this work. You know what I mean? And that's really like an unhealthy way to like deal with your grief. So I was really grateful for my therapist for like gut checking me in that way to say, look, I get it. I know you're trying to like be Super Mario and do all this stuff and honor your family. And you could drop that dead right now. And they gonna say, yo, Mario was a good guy. He really made a difference. Gone too soon. And that's where your life is. That's where your legacy ends. Is that what you want? I'm like, no, you know.
Yeah, man, so, yeah. I mean, that's just crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Importance of it.
Helpful.
I had quite a few that changed because the first meeting.
This ain't gonna work. Yeah. I've had 3 therapists, and it's because of different phases in my life. Where, like that lady was really great. She was kind of like an auntie and like a spiritual sort of advisor, and like really like got me together for that phase. And then she graduated me. Like, you doing all this stuff? You good now? You don't need me no more. And then I went to somebody else.
I think it's so important just to be able to have someone have the answer. That's what I think. My dad and my brother. I did it. and my grandmother died. It was crazy. My pops died 9 days after his birthday. I had stopped talking. A whole bunch of books and like love to read. And my mom read. And then my grandmother passed away on Christmas Eve, right? Same year. So it was like,
Wow.
yeah, it was like, oh, Merry Christmas. You know, you still have the function.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. Tripod of most influential people.
Two
Two
off
of
on my
them are
phone.
gone.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? The same year. But then it kind of set me up because it was like years later. Godmother, like, man, this one, she made her transition. Then it was the same week Bishop Rance Allen passed away. And I had developed a relationship with him. It was like phenomenal, right? Like when I say he's like he's larger than life.
Yeah.
But he was probably like one of the most loving pastors that adopted my family.
Wow.
Then like those who I had served and did so much for, he like would call me, check on me when I was in the hospital. I remember Tip called and he was like, put him up, and he prayed with me. You know what I'm saying? Then to get that call, her like, yo, I just want you to hear from me. This is what happened. I'm like, how? Like,
Yeah.
he was good. Like he was like everything just transition. And then I found out weeks later that Wednesday between them two passing away, a good friend of mine who was a pastor was out in Arkansas and was caught in crossfire and passed away. So I was like, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
like,
that's a lot.
dude, this is crazy.
Yeah,
So
that
like,
make you have to talk to somebody.
yeah,
You
like,
know what I'm saying? How do you process
what's
all
going on?
that?
Like
You know.
this. Like this person I've known over 40 years. This person I've known up 10 years. And it's like there was all people that I think what hits hard with grief, and it like you have those. It's like, oh, okay. Then those that really hit hard. 9 out of 10, vulnerability is attached to it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I just lost the physical presence of someone that I could just be completely vulnerable with. Like I don't have to guard it.
Yeah.
I
And
can just
how many
relax.
other people can you be like that?
Exactly. Yeah, you start
like,
counting like, oh my God, because those individuals help build you to a degree and added crucial pieces of the puzzle of who you're operating. And it's usually the most meaningful one. The great thing about it is, even in death, it causes you to have to rely on those things. Start really leaning on those lessons. Yeah, sure. They come to life and make sense. Yeah. Even more so in the absence of presence, which validates and solidifies the
message. Yeah, that it actually stuck. That you actually was listening.
Exactly. That part. But look, man, I appreciate it.
Cool.
I appreciate it. I want to most definitely give you the opportunity to put your information out, the school, how they can get in contact with you. In case people say like, I wanna invest, I wanna check your school out, I wanna bring my kids to be a part of the community. That's cool. Everything that's Mario Limits right now.
Cool. All right, well thank you for letting me be on. You know, I can count on one hand how many times people ever like interviewed me or like did anything like this. So thank you for letting me share. Mario Lemons, Mario Lemons on Facebook. And then Instagram is at Mario Not Luigi. So MarioNotLuigi. And then the school that I'm the head of school or principal at is Detroit Achievement Academy. And so our website is www.detroitachievement.org. everything that you need to know about us, about our curriculum, about staffing model, donations, all that kind of stuff is all on there. But you also can follow us on social media as well, because we have a pretty good social media presence. It's Detroit Achievement Academy on Facebook, and then at Detroit Achievement on Instagram. So no academy, just Detroit Achievement on Instagram. And so hit the follow button. We would love to have you follow along on the great work that we're doing in the community. And if you want to be a support, certainly there's opportunities for you to do that as well if you're interested. So.
I make sure I'm posting all that information too in the video in case you want to catch it. Okay. Again, thank you so much for tuning in.
That's cool.
Always remember, roll forward, growth, authenticity.
Peace.